And the main thing to take away here is that this is how I think that these should be done if they're going to be done this way, which I don't think they should be, but if they're going to be, here's a good way to do it. Yo, semifinals are happening tonight, I believe. They're happening tonight when I'm making this video. I think the Torium Pro goes off and I'm in Chicago, so it's overseas, so technically it's Friday over there. But they're starting. And a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about with the freaking semifinal workouts, so that the workouts suck. The individual workouts sucked at the Syndicate, and the team workouts sucked at the MAC, and I've got my opinions on the other ones, but I can only make so many videos a day. Savan, Taylor Self, Brian Friend were on there, and Savan was trying to say, hey, they're the workouts. Just do the workouts. This isn't the rule book. You can't say whether or not they're good or bad. It's opinion. Quit your complaining. That, to an extent, is true, but I also bring up Ben Smith and his little talk on his podcast, The Coach's Corner, where he said if the athletes don't speak up and the athletes just have to do whatever the athletes have to do, it's going to slowly start trickling down. And if you don't speak up, they're going to trickle down. You have to start bumping it up. You have to get the word out there so that everyone holds each other accountable. We're trying to hold each other accountable, and that stretches out to the programming done at these semifinal events, including the ones that CrossFit just willy-nilly throws out there apparently. We were very fortunate for a long time to have somebody like Dave Castro writing the workouts at the games and the regionals and all that stuff, and yeah, he had his mess-ups at some certain points in time, but for a long time, no one really said anything because for the most part, you understood the picture. You could see it. You would look at a workout and go, oh, that was the idea. Oh, there was this time duration. You're supposed to sprint that implement. That's supposed to be skill, yada, yada. And I felt like today would be a good chance for me to bring up an event that was not programmed by Dave Castro. So these events are not programmed by Dave Castro. And for the most part, I would say 80% of it doesn't look that great. I've spoken on a couple of them. Everyone's kind of got their own take on them, including these guys. Yeah, that's Get With It Programming, the OG shirt with the clown in there. It's a very cool shirt. So thanks for the shirt, guys. So they're doing their thing. They're talking about the workouts. I'm going to talk about what I think was the best programmed event outside of the CrossFit space, and that was the Mayhem Classic in 2020. That was the year where you could qualify for the Open. It would backfill on the leaderboards. It was super confusing, and nobody who was watching an event really knew what was happening. You had to have the commentator say, well, it would backfill to this person because this person qualified there, this person qualified through the Open, and then we're taking the fourth person out of this event. So yeah, that was confusing. But what came out of that year was, in my opinion, the best programmed event that side of CrossFit. It was still a CrossFit event, the Mayhem Classic. I would like to know in the comments section if you think that there's a better programmed event. Remember, these are my opinions, but I think that the CrossFit Mayhem Classic was awesome. I'm going to tell you why. I always like to offer up solutions, and they did a play-by-play before the event. They're like, hey, here are our events. It was Rich Froning on his YouTube channel talking about what it was they were looking to do with each event. That's probably the biggest issue I have with the semifinals this year. I have already mentioned in this video that when you were watching the regionals, the games, whatever, you could see the progression from the Open to the regionals to the games. Maybe we were fortunate enough to have a book by Dave Castro. We were fortunate enough to have some good media coverage of Dave Castro. So a lot of us would understand or hear through the grapevine that there was supposed to be a story from event to event. There were supposed to be reasons of these things. And if you didn't hear those reasons, at least you could look at the event and understand the purpose. This year at the semifinals, you can't look at an event and understand the purpose. You don't know what the bumpers were on the workouts given to us by CrossFit. So the very least they could have done would have been something like what Mayhem did with the 2020 Mayhem Classic, which was tell you what was going to be going down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you each of the most important parts of each of these clips. You can go still look at these workouts on the Mayhem channel, events 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 over the course of the weekend. Maybe I'll link them in the description if you want to go look for them yourselves, but I clipped out what I think was the most important part here of each of these videos. So we'll talk about those. We'll talk about the overview of the weekend, and the main thing to take away here is that this is how I think that these should be done if they're going to be done this way, which I don't think they should be, but if they're going to be, here's a good way to do it. Here's events 1 and 2 brought to you by Froning.
And so when we looked at doing the classic, I wanted to have one endurance event. This is the only event you have on day one. Let's add a little bit of weight. Let's have you carry it through the Tennessee hills and let's have some fun.
Rich says that he wanted event 1 and 2 to be done on day 1. It's the only thing you're going to be doing. You're putting on the rucksack, you're carrying some weight through the hills in Tennessee, something that him and the crew have done before. That's a trend and a theme that you're probably going to hear a couple times, is that he's done it, he knows what it's like. One of the big issues that I see with the semifinals is you look at it and you go, who the hell was testing these? Why did they think it was a good idea? So Froning brings up the fact that these hills, he's done before. He wanted an endurance endurance event in day one. He wanted it in the competition in general. It was important enough to make it worth 2 events. So the first event was you run a mile with the rucksack, and then the conclusion of the entire thing was the additional 4 miles, so the 5 miles total. I've always liked that. It's kind of similar to that row where you rode a 2K and then you finished up a half marathon. That was back in 2012, I believe, at the CrossFit Games. Not always the person who wins the mile is also going to win the 5 mile. I've always thought that one of the coolest events was something brought up by Chris Hinshaw, where it was a 400-meter repeat elimination deal, and every 400 meters somebody got kicked out. So essentially the first 400 meters of a run, maybe you can set them up on assault runners. You just go, okay, 400 meters, who was the slowest, you're out. Next one after 800 meters, you're out. Next one after 1200 meters, you're out. So on and so forth until you eliminated the entire field of 40, and then you ended up running a 10K or something like that. But you're testing the fast twitch people, and you're also testing the slow twitch people. And in the course of someone who's trying to be the fittest, and in the case of running, you want to test both of those energy systems. You can do it all in one event. That's why event 1 and 2 with Mayhem Classic is pretty cool. Going on to event number 3.
There's a little bit of history here. It's a tribute to a couple different events that we did at regionals a couple times. It was for max distance in a certain amount of time, and you had a 1 rep max snatch. We wanted to do descending reps, but ascending weight. We haven't really seen that in competition.
Outside of the endurance run, every single one of the events really kind of talks about something that he's done in the past, something that he has a feel for. I told you that it's going to be all referencing stuff that he's felt before. That's important. And in this one, it's the handstand walk, the dumbbell snatch. It has to do with regionals. He can pull from his imagination, use that and spit it out into a workout, something that he's tested before, something that has a little bit of a twist that has to do with Froning. So these events, this year in the semifinal, it's torte, 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 and you don't really know if any of this has to do with a possible spin that the event would have that has to do with themselves. Like when you go to the Granite Games, they've got the hill, you know that. I know that. I've run up and down that hill as a competitor. When you were in Aromas at the CrossFit Games, they talk about the stadium. When you're in Dubai, you run in the desert, that sort of thing. So when you're thinking Froning, you're thinking Mayhem athlete, you're thinking dumbbell squat snatches, he brings that up. He also brings up the descending rep scheme where it goes 18, 14, 10. You know, Amanda is 975. It looks like he just doubled those up and made it a 18, 14, 10 because you're doing 975 on each arm. That's a cool workout with a bunch of handstand walking 400 feet. Also a very stamp of Froning kind of, hey, this is how much handstand walk 400 feet, have fun.
You can't have well-rounded programming. You can't have well-rounded programming for a weekend without a chipper. Every event, regionals, games, the open, has a chipper. Everybody knows the assault bike has a devastating effect. Do it and then come back to it. That second set of GHDs and or the muscle ups after the GHDs. How bad do you want to hurt on that last set of burpees?
That was not a mistake. It was not a mistake that 3 times he says you cannot have well-rounded programming, because this is something that it doesn't appear the other events are really taking into account. Do I know that for sure? Absolutely not. Did the bumpers maybe mess that entire thing up that were given them by CrossFit? Maybe. But right here, Froning says that he is trying to consider well-rounded programming. He also tells you what the intent of each movement. Go watch the entire video on the Mayhem channel. It says, hey, we want this, we want this, we want this. The assault bike does this to you. The bar muscle ups are going to be a hindrance. The GHD setups on the back end will be a hindrance. And if you get to the burpee box jump over, he admits that he wants it to just be a mental battle. And as long as you're telling us that, you know that there is an intention. And if the intention is to hurt a little bit, that's completely okay, as long as that isn't the intention on every single event. Next
is grunt work. This one is kind of pedal to the metal and go. You're gonna see what the athlete has and see how much they want to hurt and how much they want to push and how competitive they are.
Okay, so I did say that every single event you're not supposed to hurt to get through it, but we are in the sport where pain tolerance is totally a thing. It's kind of your ability to shuttle out the lactate, the ability to operate at a high heart rate. And one of the things that is very common in the Froning and the Mayhem program is you've got a piece of work that isn't too easy, followed by another piece of work that isn't too easy, followed by a finishing piece of work that isn't too easy. So this is a couplet with right in the middle, you've got 30 sandbag cleans with the 150 for the guys, the 100 for the females. Shout out to Dylan Martin, who won this event over at the Mayhem Classic. Go Dylan, Team Boxstar. And the reason he won that workout is because he was very grunty. He had a very good capacity with the lunge, even with the weights on him, and then he was able to grunt his way through the sandbag. And Froning admits right there that he wanted that grunt work to be something that was taken into consideration on this workout in particular. He also liked the lunge style finish. That was something that every single time you saw it at a regional or games, it was pretty cool to see everybody. You could see them shifting down the field, and that was always important when it came to the sport aspect of this. Next,
directly based off of 2014 regionals workout, 1 legless rope climb, 100-meter sprint, whatever it was. This is much harder than that. We've actually tested this workout. We tested this workout in training for the games this year.
Now, isn't this funny? 2 years ago, Froning tried to put out a workout at the Mayhem Classic that was in replica of the 2014 workout that was 10 rounds of the 175-meter sprint run, whatever sort of run you want to call it, with the one legless rope climb. And his take on it was you do the 50-40 male-female Zeus rope double under, followed by 2 legless rope climbs for the males. I remember watching this and thinking, wow, they're really slowing down on this thing. They're not sprinting through it. And if we're being entirely honest, if I were to critique something from this Mayhem Classic, there isn't something all that sprinty. That doesn't mean that this workout is bad, but maybe they should have thrown in an 8th workout, or they should have had a workout where it was a little bit quicker. The cool thing about this is that there is an alternation on the females between rounds. So round 1 you did 1, round 2 you did 2 legless rope climbs, round 3 you did 1, round 4 you did 2, back and forth. So that was an easy way to circumvent the females possibly getting stuck up by doing too many of the upper body heavy pulling movements that would typically slow them down. It's something that he thought of, and it's cool to see that play out at the Mayhem Classic that year. And it's very cool that he leveled it up 2 years before we have this repeat workout that I think is the stupidest repeat ever. I'm not going to let that one go. Sorry, guys. Let's talk about workout number 7.
Yeah, this workout's kind of towards the upper limit of tests, I guess. And so there's going to be some athletes in the earlier heats that are staring at parallettes and are staring at a heavy barbell. I don't care how heavy you can lift when you're fresh. I want to see how heavy you can lift when you're trashed.
Everybody is open to their opinions, but it does seem like a lot of the events are opening up with the standardized CrossFit workout, which was 3 cleans, 2 front squats, and 1 jerk. Right here, Froning says that his intention with this was to put the heavy cleans at the end of the weekend, and not just put them at the end, but you're going to couple them up with the gymnastics heavy movement, that being the parallel handstand push-up. He said he wanted to do that because he doesn't really care how much you can lift, he cares how much you can lift under fatigue. And sure, that's Froning's idea of it. Maybe you just put a single heavy lift at the end of the weekend. Maybe it's okay to put the heavy lift at the beginning of the weekend. But as long as you know why it is where it is, that's probably the most important part. I already brought that up, is that we want to know why something is where it is. That being said, right there, he also brought up the fact that the workouts are not supposed to be designed to be finished. You think about the parallel handstand push-up workout, where Frazier was the only one to finish it the 1 year. Think about the pegboard workout, where there should have probably been some sort of a minimum work requirement, or you got 0 points. You weren't rewarded to not finish that one, because if you know people aren't going to finish, you should probably take into account that some people are going to try to game it and then possibly win the CrossFit Games. Katrin. That being said, I don't want to use that as an easy out for that workout, and I believe it's the Lowlands throwdown with all of those devil's presses and the sandbag cleans and the handstand push-ups with the 11-minute time cap. It's like, oh, Andrew said that's okay for no one to finish. That one just doesn't look like they had any idea what they were doing. Froning here is giving you a heavy bar and the parallel handstand push-ups, and you're limited by your ability to do the movements, not by the amount of work that they throw into a freaking 11-minute time cap. That's impossible for even freaking 3 Matt Fraziers to do in that amount of time as a team workout. It's like, hey, Andrew, go do 300 double unders in 2 minutes. And it's like, I can't do that. That's impossible. I'm not a professional jump roper. No one in CrossFit is going to be able to finish 300 double unders in 2 minutes. It's impossible. If you can finish 300 double unders in 2 minutes, go ahead and comment. I bet you can't do it. Somewhere in the middle of this entire thing, I talked how there wasn't anything short, there wasn't anything sprinty. However, maybe if you're considering like a fitness test, you don't necessarily need those. But I think you do. I think that this is missing something where maybe there's a 1 rep max or a single modality gymnastics test. You have a single modality aerobic test, that being the mile run and the long run. But I do think it's missing something that is in the 2 to 4 minute time domain. I think that that's important, especially if you do have something that stretches upwards of the 40-minute time domain on the 5-mile ruck. That is why you have 3 events being about the 8-minute time domain, which is event 3, event 5, and event 7. You've got event 6 and event 4, which are in about that 12 to 15-minute time domain. So we'll call those moderately long, and then we'll call the other ones just moderate. The about 8-minute-ers, there's 3 of those. We'll call them moderate. You've got 2 that are moderately long, and then you've got the monostructural, which I guess you could then call again moderate for the mile, long for the 5 mile. So you've touched a lot of different time domains, but you have missed the short one. I think that's important. It could have been a 1 rep max. It could have been a single modality gymnastics test. It could have been just a short couplet. It could have been a sprint chipper. It could have really been anything. And you could understand that Froning could get very creative, and maybe he didn't want to get creative. So he did tell us about each of the events, but he didn't tell us about the overarching umbrella. What is everything sitting underneath? And I'd like to know that. The other thing that I think it's missing, or maybe it has too much of this that it isn't missing anything, but there are too many many couplets. So you've got the monostructural piece, which was the first one. Event 3 is a couplet, event 5 is a couplet, event 6 is a couplet, and event 7 is a couplet. There's nothing wrong with couplets, but CrossFit is kind of founded in triplets. He has the chipper on event 4, so that's good, but I think he could have done something by eliminating maybe one of the moderate or moderately long couplets and made it some sort of a shorter sprint chipper. 2159 of row calories, burpee box jump overs, and power snatches. That was a good quarterfinal event from this year, and that would have been a good sprint chipper at some point within this weekend. But again, it's his competition. Who am I to tell him what to do? I just want to know why, what is going on, and what is going on. But I look at that and I say that that's missing. Other than that, the volume of the movements is awesome. The idea of the competition is awesome. The idea of the heavy dumbbell snatches hearkening to the regional events is cool. Every competition needs a chipper. That's very important on event number 4. Event number 5 has the grunt work, which is always important. That's an unsaid aspect of every competition. There has to be something where there is a grunt work component, I believe. Event 6 is the evolution of a former regional workout, the one that should have been evolved this year, and they didn't evolve it. They gave you the exact same thing where everyone had blown it out of the water in 2014. Froning shows you that you can and should level it up by giving everyone 2 legless rope climbs back in 2020. We missed an opportunity there, didn't we, Adrian Bosman? And then you've got event number 7, which is going to limit a lot of the athletes because they either won't be able to lift that weight on the short bar or they won't be able to handle the gymnastics on the parallel handstand push-ups. Not too much work in too little time, maybe too tough of work for some of the athletes at this point in time. So that's very good. So again, I want to ask you guys, what do you think is a competition that was possibly better than the Mayhem competition? Go ahead and throw it in the comment section. But this, in my opinion, is unbeatable unless there's something similar to it where they did throw in some sort of a shorter workout. It's the only thing I see that's missing. What do you guys think? Let me know. I love opinions. Feed me the opinions. Andrew Hiller, out.